Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining us for day 2 from the Senior Bowl with Greg Thompson and Eric Turner. Eric, how we doing?
Not too bad, brother. Another day in the books, huh?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a lot of fun today being able to go in. I had a good time last night with everybody going out and seeing so many people out. Might have had a little too good of a time, but everybody enjoyed themselves pretty thoroughly. And now, kind of getting back in there for day 2, you could tell that everybody ratcheted up a little bit, saw some real physical reps, a couple guys getting testy with each other. Yeah. And today focused a little bit more on the big guys. So yesterday was a lot of receivers, corners, and watching those one-on-ones. Today was offensive line versus defensive line.
Yeah, it was a fun day. It was a lot. First of all, it was a lot nicer, as we said, prior to going live. It was a little warmer. The sun was out for at least the first practice, I'd say. But then it did chill out a little bit. But it was a good practice. That first practice has really been, the Lions and Matt Patricia have really set the tone for this week. So it's one thing we've talked about is their practices have purpose. They're always moving in. That's no surprise coming from the Patriots. Matt Patricia and his staff. I think that's going to be interesting to watch in the game. See how that turns out.
It is funny how noticeable the efficiency, the use of time, how well it's structured for each group is doing something productive. It just seems like during the Bengals practices, there's a lot of weird downtime and guys doing kind of going through the motions on some things, but not a lot of really productive time. And it's weird how noticeable it is when you would assume that, in my mind, I came in assuming everybody would do the same thing or that, they're both NFL coaching staffs. Of course, it's going to be equal caliber of structure and reps and the different, drills they're going through. And it's alarming how different it is.
Yeah. And, that's interesting because the first drill that comes to mind is the wide receivers just running, like a 4-cone drill, just running and making their cuts, breaking down, throttling down, making their cuts. The Lions will have a guy with a bag so that the receivers use some hand usage at the top of the break. Whereas the Bengals, they're just running around the cones, breaking down like normal. So the little details that the Lions are using in their drills and their segments, it's very noticeable. And Bengals, they'll go from segment to segment, and instead of just getting right into the drill, they'll take a little water break, every little change. And it's just little things like that you start to notice. And I was telling the guys, a couple years ago when Vance Joseph coached that team, he was kind of running the practice the same way, really lackadaisical, really no purpose. And, it really showed in the game. So,
yeah, right now, if I had to pick a winner, it's kind of counterintuitive because the bigger name quarterbacks are on the South. Javon Kinlaw is on the South. That's probably where a lot of the betting attention is going to go. And I certainly expect the North to probably have the better game on Saturday. Yeah, totally. So we'll see how that shakes out. So again, if you're joining us tonight here, thanks for jumping in the chat. We've got a ton of guys in here already. If you want to come on, check out what we're doing, come on over to cover1.net. Check out all the stuff we have going. Awesome content coming out from Russell, from Christian, from Brad, from Zach. Eric's got a ton of good stuff coming out both on the site and on the Twitter feed. Make sure you're checking out what we have going on. We still have some good deals happening for the premium subscription, so check that out. Awesome stuff going on in the Slack channel. So a lot of really fun things happening to come check out. To jump right into it today, again, we spent a lot of time down in the end zone watching the big guys bang heads and going back and forth. And I was kind of surprised how big of a difference I saw between the two in that we'll go through the North first, and I saw the defensive lineman really stand out. And then in the South, within the second half, I actually thought the offensive lineman did better. There's multiple guys I showed some clips of during the day, but my top guy for that group was probably a tie between either Neville Gallimore or Bradley and I. And, Gallimore is a guy that may have priced himself out of our range. I was kind of hoping he might be able to be a late day 2, early day 3, 3rd or 4th round pick, and he's now definitely got himself up above there and very disruptive. Looks like a nice – I don't want to say a poor man's Ed Oliver, but he's very versatile. He's not the biggest guy out there for a 3-tech, but he's just constantly, disrupting what's going on.
Yeah, and coming from that program and that system, that defensive system at Oklahoma, when you could see the change, the improvement from his junior to senior year, especially when you look at his body and his quickness and firing off the ball. But we were talking about this at practice. When he gets NFL coaching, who knows where that ceiling can then go to, you know what I mean? And we saw him prior to practice working with the coaches, and Bo Davis and Ty Warren, which I didn't realize Ty Warren, the former Patriot, is actually a coach with the Lions. So he was getting that.
And is an enormous human.
He's enormous, but it was really nice too, because we're all standing along the gate. And they were done, going over some drills with the defensive lineman, and he came over and introduced himself, and so it was really cool. Like I didn't even realize he was in the league. So so it'll be interesting to see Gallimore where he goes, but also the type of coaching he's going to get, and who knows where that ceiling can go.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. I still certainly a name that I want to track, guy that I'm impressed with. Another one that I definitely like and consistently has stood out to me the most is Bradley Anai, defensive end from Utah, really thickly built. He's 6'3", 265, but carries it really, really well. Just has awesome get off and a really good variety of moves, and is consistently able to beat his man in different ways. You can tell he's a bit more advanced in just his technical approach and how many moves and counter moves he has compared to guys at this stage. So a guy that I certainly see as a potential target as we get into that day 2 range.
Yeah, he showed everything that's on his film. He's not the fastest or quickest guy off the line, but he's gonna obviously throw different pass rush plans at you. And we saw that today. He won with a wide rush. So normally when teams or opposing offenses send a tight end to his side and close off that side, they make him kick out a little wider. He doesn't have quite the speed. Same with Kenny Willekes to close on a quarterback. Well, today he showed a move where he was kicked out wide like that versus a tight end release on a pass. And Anai took the tackle upfield and then back inside. We saw several moves. There was another where he got up and close into the tackle, got into the body, a little push-pull move, got in there under pressure. And another was, the stab chop. That's like his go-to move. So he flashed a little bit of everything. And he just, he's quiet, but he comes to work, and he was just effective. And I don't know how much more is left in his game. He may be maxed out in a sense, but what he is right now is a pretty damn good pass rusher, and that's what this league's all about. Yeah,
I don't know that he's ever going to be some league-leading sack artist or something like that. He is going to be a rotational defensive end for a long stretch. He's going to contribute.
I think for me, he was definitely the top guy. Yeah. Right below him, for me, was Larrell Murchison.
That's interesting. It wasn't a name I was all that familiar with coming in. I didn't know a lot about him. I didn't see a lot about him, but he definitely flashed today. It was impressive.
Yeah, he. It's weird because when I went back and looked at some of his film prior to going live, he played more defensive end in an odd front. So he. Where he would go in, at the next level, whether it's a 3-tech or he showed some nose reps today, but he was effective as a pass rusher today. One-on-ones, he was using spin move after spin move. Almost did it a little too much, but it was very effective. I was really impressed with how he's kind of short. I think he's just under 6'3", 290, 91 pounds, something like that. But he plays with good leverage. He's kind of short and stout, but he plays really good leverage, and he wasn't letting the offensive lineman reach him. So he's an interesting guy to watch, because if the Bills need depth at D tackle, if that guy can come in and play 3-tech, 30%, whatever, to spell Ed Oliver, he's the type of guy that you could kind of groom. And we also have to look at the NC State program. They've put out some really good defensive linemen in the last few years.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's somebody that went from nowhere on my radar to now somebody I'm definitely going to track and do some more work on. One more defensive lineman, 2 more that I noted. Devon Hamilton from Ohio State was a similar guy, bigger guy, 6'4", 310, also built like a fire hydrant, like really thickly built through the middle, and was constantly able to move his man. Nobody could keep him contained. I don't know that he's going to be all that explosive or some game-wrecking presence, but he can hold his ground and penetrate through there, and is going to be somebody who I think is going to be a rotational defensive tackle.
Yeah, he played more of a shade nose at Ohio State, but he was pretty effective this year as a pass rush. I think he had something like 6 sacks from that position, which is really good for a pass rushing sense from the nose tackle position. But today, the one play that comes to mind was he blew up Nick Harris in the backfield and blew the run play up. I think it was an outside zone to the right-hand side. He just blew that play up. And, yeah, he had a good day today for sure.
One more defensive lineman that stood out on the north. Again, a guy that I didn't have a ton of background on coming in, Jason Strobridge. He is one of those first off the bus guys.
Yeah.
Like, he looks ridiculous and is just chiseled, but plays at a 3-tech defensive tackle. He played in the season closer to 285, but he weighed in at 267. So it's interesting. I'm not sure if that's because he already knew that he wasn't going to be able to play a ton of D tackle at 285, so he's now preparing for that. I think that he's obviously not going to be able to hold up for high rep count that small, but his ability, I mean, he's got some nice moves, and he had a great counter that he was able to cut back in very, very quick, which you would expect somebody of that size, but somebody that I'm going to do a little bit more work on as well.
Yeah, he's an odd character, to be honest, because he's very quick off the ball, and he has really good agility, so much so they're using him on special teams too. So he's an athletic kid, but, when it came to team time and they're doing some inside run segments, he was getting blown off the ball. The holes were just wide because they're just pushing him wide. I remember one play, Bredesen, the guard from Michigan, just wiped him out of the play. So he's going to be interesting. I mean, I assume he's probably going to have to bump outside a little more.
So it's logical.
Especially, come the game this week. So he'll be interesting to watch. Another couple guys I'll just throw out there before we go to the other side. Jonah Jackson, guard from Ohio State. He's someone that I watched prior to coming here to Mobile, and I think he had a really good day today. Worked really well on his combo blocks and then climbing to the next level on a couple of those power runs to his side. I mentioned Bredesen, the guard from Michigan, and then finally Josh Jones, the tackle from Houston, man. A lot of zone teams, I think, are going to like him. He's got good length, and he was moving really well to the next level on those outside zone runs that were away from him. And so he was, one of the plays, he was 10, 15 yards down the field blocking still on the backside of a zone run. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Had pretty good segments in the one-on-one period too. A couple of good pass sets. He's an athletic guy that I honestly didn't know too much about either. So
another guy that I'm going to do some work on, Colton McKivitz, tackle from West Virginia, 6'7", 312, really big guy. And he had some nice reps as well. I was going to do a little bit more work on. For the most part, all of the defensive linemen that we listed were because they were getting the better of the offensive linemen, so not all that many stood out.
Speaking of getting the better of, you ask anyone in the stadium today who the worst player was, Nick Harris. He got tore up today, man.
It was rough. I feel bad. He's out there trying to hold his own. Already played a little bit lighter in the season. They listed him at 300. I think he weighed in at 291. Yeah. He was just getting mauled. It was
He's
rough.
Throwing a punch. He's being really aggressive in the one-on-one period, being really aggressive and just whiffing on his punches. He had a couple bad snaps. Yeah. He was visibly frustrated.
He was getting in his head.
Yeah, he was totally off today. And I thought yesterday, early on, he had a pretty good day. He was able to anchor a little bit better. But today, I didn't see really one good rep from him.
Yeah, it was rough. Switching over to the other side on the south, the later practice, I saw a lot of the opposite. I saw this is a group that has some really talented names on the defensive line, and I actually was seeing the offensive linemen get the better of them over and over again. So I still saw some flashes. You have a couple of guys that obviously are just going to be fantastic, that are always going to be putting up a good show. But even guys like Kinlaw today, I saw Damian Lewis of LSU get the better of him 3 times.
Yeah.
And really hold his own. That was a name that I had no reference of, and he really showed out to me. Guard for LSU, Damian Lewis, 6'3", 332, big guy, and he looked fantastic today.
His teammate was right there with him. Lloyd Cushenberry, to me, was him and Ishmael, the center from San Diego State, were the 2 best players in my book, in my eyes. I think Cushenberry and Lewis, they were next to each other on a lot of these, obviously, run fits and pass blocking and whatnot. And Cushenberry's quickness out of his stance was noticeable today. His pad level is always low. You always see his helmet is almost below the chin of the defensive lineman, and he gets there way quicker than the defensive lineman's getting off the ball.
And that's a 6'4" for a second.
Yeah, and he was doing some amazing things on some zone reach blocks and stuff like that. And his hand placement is very consistent. He's got his, outside hand on the outside for steering. He's got his right hand on the inside for that, that leverage and power. I thought he had a really good day. And as I mentioned, Ishmael, that center from San Diego State. Obviously, they're usually a run-heavy team. He showed that he could pull a little bit. Some of his down blocks, he threw Kinlaw. Kinlaw was a shade nose tackle on a play. They ran a down block with him because they were running a power run, and he just threw Kinlaw out the club. Yeah. So he's going to be an interesting guy to watch for teams that are looking for center, obviously.
Yeah, and another name from a major program, John Simpson from Clemson, just consistently good technique, always had his feet underneath him, moving well, was consistently keeping motion and being able to go along, and somebody that I thought showed out really well. And my other name, it's funny, Mike in the chat is asking us about it here, Ben Barch from St. John's, D3 program, 6'6", 305. I thought he showed phenomenally. I thought he was, aggressive, used his hands really well, and just was someone that I had no reference to coming in here, and that I thought stepping up that level of competition consistently showed positively.
Yeah, I think that you can tell that the competition is different for him, but he's adjusting to it. Each rep gets a little bit better, and I thought he handled, edge rushers that were trying to push him upfield and cut back inside. I thought he had the agility to, power step back inside and pick up those blocks. So I agree with Simpson, though, man. Yeah. That guy is powerful.
Yes.
I mean, if he gets his paws on you, his grip strength, and his ability to just torque and throw you, he is a really strong guy. And, when he goes into combo blocks with people, those guys are getting driven back. As long as his pad level is good, because sometimes he shoots out of his stance a little too high, sometimes he's on his toes a little too much, and he can get thrown. But, man, if he gets up under you, bye, because you're going to be moved and you're going to be driven back 5 yards into the end zone. And we saw that a couple of times today.
Well, and especially you look at the age contract situation we have with Spencer Long, John Feliciano, and I think possibly Quentin Spain. I think he'd be a great player to be able to bring in that you don't need to plug in and start day one, but can contribute if you get an injury, and then is a great option that after a year in an NFL program, when Feliciano's contract is up, when Long's contract's up, depending on how negotiations go with Spain, that's a great option to be able to plug in year 2, year 3, that may be able to develop in a starting role down the line.
Yeah, he played in a lot of big games. Yep. And he's a former wrestler. Yeah. State champ, junior year, I believe it was.
Yeah, and you could tell he's a very solid athlete for as big as he is, 6'4", 330 at guard, and moves well for that size.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, I thought the offensive linemen looked better as a whole, but there were a couple defensive linemen that stood out. I thought Jonathan Greenard, both guys from Florida, I thought they had some nice reps. Greenard and Zuniga had a couple where I actually was most impressed in the few. Zuniga is going to be more of an edge guy trying to get around there. I thought he held and anchored well on a couple. They were doing some drills where it wasn't necessarily most of the one-on-ones the defensive linemen are trying to shuck and get off the guy as quick as possible. They were making them hold their ground on a few to try to keep their outside arm free. And he had one against the monster offensive tackle Taylor from South Carolina State, who's 6'9", 305 and crazy long. And he was, holding the long arm, keeping his outside arm free, and completely stoned him one-handed. And it was just a really impressive look for a guy that, people talk about his hands and his get-off, maybe not his anchor as much.
Yeah, and, those are the type of things he needs to show on film, because he's more of a pass rusher, and I thought his film last year, from what I remember, was better than this year. So being able to sit and set that edge, that's really what he needs to show us, because of course he's going to win with his explosiveness and his quickness in the pass game, as a pass rusher. But he needs to show that he can defend the run a little better, because there were times, though, he got washed out. When you went to the team segment, he got washed out a little bit too. But you're right, on those outside zone reach plays, he didn't get reached. But that quickness had a lot to do with that too, and you're right. So that technique, that hand technique, and a ability to anchor is something that we do need to continue to see from him.
So as we kind of wrap up here, I know, I thought some winners today. I thought Bradley and I was a winner. I thought Damian Lewis for me was a winner. I thought John Simpson was a winner. And then it's funny, I spend all the time looking at the big guys in the end zone. When I would look up and watch the full team go, I saw Van Jefferson flash again with a couple nice routes. So he's definitely someone who's staying on my radar as we get going here.
It's funny because when we're in the team segment, I was more zoned in from tackle to tackle. I was trying to watch. We're watching it from the end zone, so I was trying to watch the tackle to tackle box. And all of a sudden, once I see the ball thrown up, I go to a wide view of the play, and it was Van Jefferson on the other end making catches. Even that one play where I think he drew a penalty. Yeah. And he still jumped up and caught the ball.
Got interfered with and still went up for a contested catch.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, no, that's he's definitely my biggest winner so far of the week overall, but looking forward to seeing how that continues through the process. Any other guys that flashed for you or you want to mention?
Negatively, guy that I've shown video on was Logan Steinberg, guard from Kentucky. The coaching staff laid into him. And, I mean, Jim Turner, I believe, is the coach for the Bengals, offensive line coach, and he was fun, huh?
Yeah, he was so hysterical. He was every stereotype of an offensive line coach you could possibly think of. Crazy, thick Boston accent. Every other word's a swear word. He's hysterical.
Yeah, he was laying into him a lot today. And it was just mainly like nuance, little technical things, hand placement, his alignment, his split was too narrow on one of the plays. I mean, just little things that he needs to clean up. And, of course, his hand placement, because he'd gotten yelled a couple times today for his hand placement. And that's something that, for a guy that gets all those penalties called on him, you can't have those holding calls in a game and whatnot. So, but when they got to the team segment, he was mauling guys. He was driving people out of there. But in the league, when you have guys that are better than just, some of these all-star players that are in this game or are here this week, you need your technique. You can't just rely on power because everyone is strong at the next level.
Yeah, and it was hard. You could tell he was getting frustrated because many of the reps he was getting yelled at, he was technically winning. Like he was getting over on the guy, but he wasn't doing the technique the right way or the drill that the coach was looking for. They were trying to keep the hand inside and he was going outside. And those things matter. And that might be fine now because you might just be more talented than the guy you're going up against, but that's not going to work when, all of a sudden that's Fletcher Cox that you need to keep, your technique against. So.
Yeah, and to be fair to him, I mean, the Bengals were running a lot of zone blocking concepts, and he's more of a power guy. Yeah. So that is something that you can, you put him in that bucket, a power run game, a gap scheme, because he's big. He can set those down blocks, but he's not a guy that's going to win with his footwork, firing out of his stance. He's not going to win that way. So he's going to be, thrown into a specific type of style of offense, and he'll be just fine.
Yeah. So one last thing for tomorrow, there is some nasty weather coming in, so they're moving practice from the outdoor Lad People Stadium to the kind of indoor pavilion covered area at Southern Alabama. We're not sure what the setup's going to be, how good of film or content that we're going to be able to get from the segment. So we're still going to be heading down there. We're still going to plan to do everything that we can. There's a chance we're going to be crammed in like sardines into a really small area. So we'll respond accordingly with what we can. Maybe we'll break into some of the film room stuff. We'll get into some other areas, but we'll let you guys know as we get going tomorrow and then decide if we're going to have a normal show for the third one or maybe a couple different things you might see as we get into the weekend.
Definitely. No, I'm excited. Last year we were rained out too, but we didn't really have access to the actual practice, which they let us know today that we may have access to it. Yeah. Last year they sent us the film of the practice. They streamed some of it on Periscope or something. So as of right now, they're saying we have access to a certain area of the field, but who knows how that's going to go. I'm sure we're not going to have as much film, obviously. And we'll let you guys know as far as content goes.
So appreciate it, everybody. Great job jumping in the chat. We appreciate everybody's time and attention here. It's been a lot of fun. Eric, appreciate you jumping on with us. It's been a great time this week. Looking forward to being able to see even more here. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.